don't think I don't think the will is free there. I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay, so I don't know if I really want to go over again what the terminology you use and how it's proprietary. It's just kind of irrelevant. I think you understand what my position is in terms of compatibilism. And if you just want to say, well, that's not what I'm going to mean by free will, then okay, I'll agree to that. That's fine. I mean, whatever. I take a popular view. I think it's a useful use of the term, and it seems to describe a phenomenon in the world. I mean, there's not really much more to it than that.
Yeah, I think there's probably less to it even than that. So saying that it's useful and popular, those are both fallacies, right? So I don't think we're having a philosophical discussion at the point.
They're not fallacies.
Hey, you know, I think it's pretty. You know, it's kind of be less useful if I didn't have this, and yeah, it's pretty popular. So yeah, we're just.
That's not a fallacy.
Both of those are fallacies, actually.
No,
one is an appeal. It is. One's an appeal to consequences, right? Saying like, well, it would be less useful if I didn't have this, and the other one is, yeah, it's pretty popular.
Yeah, the way we use terms is in a very infallacious way, informed by popular usage.
There was a third fallacy, which is like, hey, I don't know, like most philosophers would agree with me. You haven't made any arguments actually for the case.
No, the only thing I was saying there was to point out that it's not like a fringe view as you were suggesting. But the reason that neither of these are fallacies is that, of course, the way we use terms is going to be informed by pragmatics and by popular usage. That's not fallacious at all. That's a perfectly valid appeal.
No, you're wrong. So basically, when you say,
"Are you serious?" Wait. I'm not going to let this go.
So I promise. I've let you speak.
You're actually going to say
that, right?
How to choose our usage of terms is no.
If you're going to be an honest interlocutor, right? I've sat through what you said. I've disagreed with it patiently because I'm civilized. Right?
Okay. So all I was saying is a very simple point, right? That our usage of terms is going to be informed, right, by popular usage and what's a useful use of the term. That's not a fallacy. I'm not going to let that go.
Don't ever do that again.
No.
Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me when I've patiently let you speak. Don't interrupt me when I've patiently let you speak, right? Disagreeing with what you've said, right? Just because you're able to mute me, right? Do not do that again. Okay?
I will if necessary.
If there's no necessary to it, you don't get to interrupt people because you disagree with them. When other people, no, I did not interrupt you. I let you speak, though I disagreed. Right? So do not do that again.
Yeah, there is no necessary. I will do it again, and I continue talking.
There is no. There is no. Why are you interrupting me?
I'm not.
You just interrupted me. Are you mad? You just began talking as I was speaking. Right? No, so don't do that again. If you're incapable of having a civil conversation where we take turns, there is no conversation will be had. Okay? So don't do that again.
I will.
Now, to my point, would you please, okay, this is the last time. If you do this again, I will be gone. My point, right? When you say that I think it's a pretty useful way of talking about something, okay, that is an appeal, right, to how much less you, by inference, right? Basically, the corollary of that is it would be less useful if I didn't, right? In philosophy, we talk about what is the case, right? Facts of the matter, not whether a thing is expedient. Right? Not whether it's like it's a useful way to think about it, right? We're talking about whether a thing is the case. There's a difference there.
Right. So the mistake there is that that's not the case when choosing how to define our terms, right? That's largely a pragmatic concern and one that's concerned with popular usage, right? So in that case, we're not just looking at what is the case. We're looking at, well, what makes sense in terms of term usage and in terms of matching popular usage. In that case, appeal to pragmatics or to popularity is appropriate. In fact, not a fallacy.
No, I don't think you're understanding the point. The point is that everyone can be wrong about something, okay? And that is a fallacy. Likewise, when you say it's pretty useful to talk about it, I think it's kind of a useful way to think of it, right? So useful, right? The usefulness of it doesn't define the fact of it, how, its constitution, its qualities. It may be extremely unhelpful for humans to engage with the notion that they may just be automata of a biological sort, right? And so to say, well, it's useful to think about free will as being like this, that's a fallacy. It's not the term. Sorry.
So on the first point.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
No. I was done. Go ahead.
Okay, so on the first point, yes. Fixing a definition for free will, of course, everyone could be wrong about it, sure, in principle. But that's not the claim I'm making, that not everyone could be wrong about it. Not everyone could be wrong about what they mean by it, right? And so the idea that people mean something like this by free will and appealing to what they mean by it in order to, talk about popular usage is not fallacious at all, right? I'm not saying it's true because, people believe in this sort of free will. I'm saying that this makes sense in terms of term usage because that's the popular usage, right? So an appeal to popular usage is perfectly fine in order to talk about common usage, right? Obviously. And second, in terms of, what was the other point? Pragmatics, yeah. I'm not saying, again, that, look, all I'm saying is we can use different terms in different ways, right? And it seems to make sense to me to use terms, at least in general, right? You want to use terms in ways that a lot other people are using them, right? In order to aid in communication and other instrumental ends like that. Appealing to the way a lot of philosophers use the term, i.e. most of them compatibilists, and I think a lot of lay people use it in the same way. Appealing to popular uses in that way in order to talk about it not, first of all, not being a fringe view, seems perfectly appropriate and not fallacious as well. So.
Okay, so as to the fringe view, it was my understanding of your view that even though something was absolutely, determined, right, it was somehow free. But the moment you said no, your view of compatibilism, as I defined it, right, where basically it is unencumbered. That's like we are then on the same page, right? Kind of mistaken understanding over. It's like you actually have a fairly orthodox position there. Nothing, nothing strange about it in that sense. You're a compatibilist of a particular sort that I defined, right?
Yeah, although unencumbered itself is a bit ambiguous, right? Because look, as long as it satisfies the criteria that I roughly sketched out, right? That the action is something you perform, it is willed by you, and there's going to be certain facts about your beliefs and desires in order to produce that effect, something like that. As long as those are satisfied, then the action performed is free in this compatibilist sense. If it being unencumbered doesn't entail anything about it not having prior determining causes or something like that. So, on my view. Yeah.
So my question is, where is freedom there? So you could say that a thing basically, has symmetry with intention and basically results in action, right? That doesn't speak about the will being free, which is the point of the free will debate. That's all
I would take free will to be. I'm not sure. It's like asking, so this is what I mean by free will. There's the free will, right? And then you're like, but where's the free will? But that's what it is, right? That's what I mean by it, right? It's just the will proceeds on its own.
Right. So that's unorthodox, right? Basically, because the actual position that you said is closer to the one that you identify as basically talks about free will, your will being free, in so much as you are not being unduly restrained. That's what the freedom is, right? Free from restraint. And that's what I mean by encumbered. But when you're like, no, what I mean by free will is just basically an action which is in symmetry with my intentions, right?
Sure. I mean, but it depends on, so like I can talk about this as being free from restraint or unencumbered, right? But it depends on what things we're counting as restraints or what can encumber you. That's why I said it's somewhat ambiguous. But
absolutely,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a well-known problem with the position. It's like, well, when you say free will, this version of compatibilist free will, when you say like that, yeah, what it means is to be basically, unconstrained and, not unduly constrained in your actions, so not prevented or coerced or actually physically restrained, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have any clear boundaries. Like, is someone who is under the influence of an ideology that one person may consider a cult, but other person would think is, just a religion, actually a true religion, right? One would say, well, they're in a cult, so they were brainwashed, their free will was taken away. And someone else would say, no, they were just a true believer in this great religion. This is why it seems to lack sufficient definition as to actually be useful. Right. So both people would report, last thing I'll say, both the person who is in what you would consider the coercive brainwashing cult and the person who is in just your, common or garden, let's say even just, whatever. They just, they believe in, let's say, an elective democracy or something like this. Both people would report that, yeah, in both cases, in their actions under the auspices of these worldviews, their actions are in line with their intentions, right? And the person who's brainwashed in a cult, that everyone would, even a court would say that they were in the Manson family. They'd been given, hallucinogens and, convinced of this kind of mythology which drove them to homicide. You would say, yeah, but they still had their free will because their intentions were in line with their actions.
Yeah, so while I don't think that's a particularly good example, I would grant that, of course, there's going to be edge cases. It's a little gray given, especially as I stated it, my conception is a bit imprecise. And so there'll be some edge cases that it doesn't handle very well. But all the same, I don't see that as a major concern. Just as many of our other concepts are vague, perhaps most of them, and don't handle edge cases very well in all those cases either. So, yeah, there's going to be some edge cases for which there may be no fact of the matter or may be unclear, but that's just going to be a general problem of vagueness. I don't think that seriously undermines the view.
I think it actually renders the view in so much as you're talking about free will, the fact that it doesn't actually define, which is the point of the free will debate, like where is the freedom in free will? When it's just completely undefined, this is when I say you're no longer having a free will debate, right? You're just saying, I'm not going to specify where the freedom occurs, where it exists, or how it basically is in symmetry. I'm just going to say, I call this thing free. And so I could equally, take a person who's in chains and say, I call this freedom. And so that's where I sit.
You could do that. That's fine. It's just going to be out of accord with common linguistic practices. But I don't think I'm doing that.
Sorry, I missed you broke my fault. I think you broke up for me. You could do that, but?
I said you could do that, right? Nothing's stopping us from using language in a way like that. It's just that it's going to be out of accord with common linguistic practices. But I'm not doing that, of course.
In a sense, the whole point about the free will debate is that the common human conception, right, the common practice and use of language could extend from this notion that free will is an illusion. The fact that we do have this like common parlance is not a reason to argue for anything other than, yeah, this is how most people talk. But the entire thing certainly there's good evidence to think that it's an illusion. And so just to say, well, I don't care, I'm just going to call it free in any case, because that's just how most people talk, right? That's outside of the debate, essentially.
But when we say X is an illusion, the truth of that sentence is going to depend on what we mean by X, right? At least in part, right? So
yes.
If we substitute X in with free will, as I'm using the term, as a fair amount of people use the term, in a compatibilist sense, well, the sentence is going to turn out false. If you substitute it in an incompatibilist way, perhaps it'll turn out true. But I mean, that's just uninteresting. We have to be clear on how we're using the terms in order to adjudicate the truth of the sentence.
Yeah, I mean, that's well explored in this particular debate, right? So it's the notion that our intentions basically and our conscious decisions are the causes of our subsequently entrained actions. And the discovery that our conscious intentions lag the entrainment of our actions, right? Basically precisely speaks to the notion that our common conception that I cause this via my conscious decision. Right. This was the causal precursor and the cause which caused me to reach out for this glass. That's actually a post-dicted illusion. Right. It's quite precisely framed. It's an illusion.
Well, so are you appealing to like the Libet experiments and stuff like that? Because I don't think those show anything like that at all. In fact, all it shows is that there's prior causes from which you can predict the outcomes of your action, but that they don't show that those are the causes and not your conscious states.
If something is basically if something follows an event, right? If we're living in the world of classical mechanics, right? Events do not precede their causes. It's the causes that entrain the events, right? So basically, if the action, right, the decision is experienced as being prior to the causation of the event, right? Then we have like it was actually, you stand a shot at the decision was at least in the right causal sequence to stand a shot at being the cause, right? But if the action is already entrained, right, that basically is fired off, and then the conscious experience of having made that decision comes afterwards. You're out of the game of being able to say that consciousness caused it.
No, that's the same mistake. No. That's the same mistake. What I would grant is, of course, if you think your conscious event occurs after the effect, then of course it can't be the cause of it, right? But the fact that it occurs after some other event, which would entail a particular outcome, doesn't entail that it's not the cause of the outcome, right? So take A, B, and C, right? Where these are just different events. A is some early event that causes B, and B causes C, and C is like, I don't know, some action that a person takes. The fact, and we may know, right, just by analyzing A, that C is going to come later in the causal chain. But that doesn't mean that B is not a genuine cause of C, right? It can fully cause C even if B is caused by A. And A entails C as well.
I think we can break it down more simply than that, right? All we have to say is that we have A and B, consciousness and action. And when we discover that consciousness basically follows action, right? We can't have the consciousness causing the action.
Yeah, of course. In the case where the action comes before the conscious event, then the conscious event won't be the cause of that action. Sure.
Which is what we do. Sorry.
Yeah, I said that at the beginning of my response. So of course, that's agreed.
Right, which is what we discover when we look basically at the entrainment of actions. So basically,
where do we discover
you
that?
can. I'm sorry, say again.
Where do we discover that?
Where do we discover that? So if you, for instance, look at the premotor cortex, which basically begins the entrainment of an action, like to press a button, to reach out and grasp something, or to make a move in a particular game, right? Basically, the physical premotor action already entrains and has entrained a button press, a hand grab, a move of a piece, a game of tic-tac-toe, whatever it is, before the conscious experience of having made that decision. So that's where we discover that. We discover that in the best example of it is actually in patients who are undergoing deep brain stimulation or placement of electrodes for epilepsy, because there you actually have access to an open brain, and you can basically monitor the premotor cortex and basically the motor cortex driving the action. And then when it is that someone reports the moment at which they made a decision, and what you discover there is that their experience of the decision basically came after the action was already performed. That happens regularly.
Right. So, but I already look. The conclusion of this is not your desired conclusion. All we can get from this is that your conscious event is not the cause of those particular neural events, right? Or the raising of some motor potential or some initial whatever. Like, so what? That doesn't entail that it's not the cause of the later action.
If something comes after the action, it kind of caused the action, right? So we agree on that, right? And so in that sense, when you are talking about, let's say, this subject began on what you said was an ill definition, right? It's kind of ill-defined as to what it means for consciousness to cause something, or for intention to cause something, or that kind of thing. And I said, no, it's quite well defined, and we know it's not the case. We have good reason to understand that the experience of free will, of having authored an action, is in fact an illusion. Having authored an action via your conscious deliberation is an illusion. And you said, how do we know that? I've just explained how, right? We know that consciousness comes after the event. So that's an illusion, that your decision caused it, because your decision, the experience of that decision came after the event.
No, but you're making the same mistake. It doesn't come after the event. It comes after some